Good evening. Tonight, we've got two different meetings, a Public Housing Authority meeting and then a study session, of which we will be handing out service awards and recognitions. But preceding that, we do have a Public Housing Authority Commission. And with that note, I'd like to call that to order. Clerk, please pull the roll.
Chairman Hartke,
Here.
Vice Chair Stewart,
Here.
Commissioner Dearman,
Here.
Commissioner Harris,
Here.
Commissioner Lopez,
Here.
Commissioner Rowe,
Here.
Commissioner Ellis,
Here.
Commissioner Orlando.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, City Clerk. Do we have any, did anyone turn in a card for public appearances? All right. Council, we do have two consent items on here, but I understand that Councilmember Ellis, you wanted a presentation on item number 2?
Yes. yeah,
Councilmember Ellis.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask Josh if you could please have that presentation for me. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, if I could ask our Neighborhood Resources Department to come forward and present on item number 2.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Commission. Tonight, I'm briefly going to discuss our Public Housing Authority 2021 Annual Plan Policy Updates. In November of 2020, staff began the preliminary process of reviewing and updating our annual plan in consultation with our resident advisory board, our consultants, housing residents, and interested members in our public. The elements outlined are proposed our annual changes required by HUD and requested by staff. The 2020 annual plan is due to HUD on April 17th, 2021, and the public housing plan incorporates policy changes for both public housing and our Housing Choice Voucher program. During the 45-day public comment period, housing residents and interested members of our public had an opportunity to submit their written comments. We had a great dialogue during these meetings, and we did not receive written request changes for our proposed policies. As you can see here, there was multiple opportunities to submit comments. The Chandler Public Housing Authority is administered by the Housing and Redevelopment Division. We own and operate 303 public housing units and administer 486 vouchers. We set policy and procedures for these two programs. One important program I do want to highlight is our Family Self-Sufficiency Program. This is a hand-up program for our families. The goal of this program is to transition our families out of assisted housing. We average about 140 families that we case manage for both of these programs. As an example, to gain self-sufficiency, our families are working on education, obtaining higher education degrees, job readiness, interview techniques, resume writing, and job placement and training programs. Also is our financial readiness, preparing for homeownership. Also increasing credit scores and working in first-time homebuyer assistant programs. HUD has designed the Public Housing Authority, or designated us as a high-performing housing authority in our financial, our overall management, and our property compliance. We keep up our policies annually and look to HUD for the regulatory guidance, but there's also some discretionary items that we are taking a look at on an annual basis. I want to briefly just go over our summary of our annual policy changes, specifically policies related to some questions that may have been answered through this process. I do want to go over the repeat late payments. This is a revised policy in which we shorten the number of times a tenant can be late or delinquent on rental housing payments. It went from 6 late payments in 1 year period to 4. If a tenant is late at the 5th time, we can seek termination of assistance as it constitutes an incurable lease violation. It's really important, though, to note that this policy of not having tenants pay on time is really is subject to communication. We, as a housing authority, communicate extensively with our housing residents, very much so on an annual basis. And more importantly to note right now, because we are currently under an eviction moratorium issued by the CDC, we are not evicting any housing residents at this time. In fact, we're working with all of our residents. We want to make sure that they have the resources that they need, such as the Ascend Rental Assistance Program. We want to make sure that families have this rental resource, and we have a dedicated cares team in which we have staff that does case management for any families that are behind on their rent. The key here is communication. We are in the business of housing people, and we will do everything we can to make sure that they stay housed. The other policy update is our over income, and that is a policy which we revised after hearing feedback from our last public housing plan presentation, in which HUD requires us to still monitor and take a look at household income over the 2 years, and that is a regulatory requirement. However, if a household continues to be over income at the end of that 2-year period, the family will be given a 30-day notice of termination of assistance based on that verified income that we received. However, though, if a family income does change before that termination date, we will no longer have that family be over income, and we will void that termination.
Chairman, I have a question.
Please, go ahead.
In terms of the actual verified income, is that verified income based on like overtime? So for instance, a person may be working more overtime than normal, working at the same job, probably making, let's say, $24,000 a year, but because of, let's say, for instance, the pandemic, a lot of people stopped working, not able to, their hours went up. What is, when you say that, because my understanding of income has to do with whatever you bring in, are there exceptions to people who are, is there an exception for overtime versus base pay, or how you're calculating, how do you see that 2-year mark in terms of income?
Okay, Chairman Hartke, Commissioner Harris, we verify income on an annual basis. So for instance, in the situation that you're referring to, if a family increases their income or has a decrease of income, they're required within a 10-day period to notify the housing authority, at which time we will adjust their rent based on whatever situation that family will have. So for instance, if they increase their income, they may gain additional hours, and it's going to be a consistent thing over the next year. At that time, we will adjust income as needed. But then again, if a family loses a job, then they notify us, and we will reduce their rent payments based on 30% of their income to housing.
So I guess my direct question is that the base pay over overtime pay. So at the end of the year, they may have made more money as overall income, but their base is still the same, but they're making more money because they're working overtime because of the demand on the job. It may be for an extended period of time. But what I'm trying to, when you're talking about changing this policy, I'm trying to really understand base pay. Are we separating base pay from overtime pay? Or maybe they got a bonus, unexpected bonus. Maybe they got, they had seasonal, they get paid time off and they didn't use it, and they worked the whole entire year, but they didn't use it. At the end of the year, the company is cashing them out. So I'm saying, are we looking at that as this is the base pay, but yes, these are some unusual income increases?
So Chairman Hartke, Councilmember Harris, so in that particular situation, we look at adjusted income. So there could be reasons why we wouldn't include some income. But in your particular situation where it's, they may have an increase because of the seasonal jobs and they're doing additional overtime, we would categorize that as all income earned, in which case that would be a change of income.
So you don't, so basically what you're saying to me is you don't have a way, you don't consider that as a separate income. You consider it adjusted growth, saying that it's all together.
That's correct.
So what I'm saying is that we have call centers here in Chandler, right? Some of the call centers, their base pay is $12 an hour, and they may make additional commissions. They may make additional money over a period of 2 years. And that may not be normal, but it is for now. So what you're saying is that we are looking to update our policies to say, okay, 2 years, even though that's not their base pay, even though it's not what they normally make, in 2 years, because you consistently make this, we're looking at evicting you or giving you that pathway to saying, hey, you have to leave here, even though it may have been only 2 years and it may be just above. Is that what you're saying to us today?
So, Chairman Hartke, Councilmember or Chairman Harris, we will probably be in consultation with that family. So after that first year that we find that that family is over income, we will reach out to them and ask them how they're gaining that additional income. So if it's not a consistent and that next year in which they may be over income, we will want to, again, after that second year, we reevaluate that income again. And I would say in that particular case, we wouldn't necessarily terminate assistance because it wouldn't be a consistent income. So after, in that third year, if they're still over income, then most likely yes. But if they're not, and we made a consultation with that family and it's not going to be a consistent things for that third year, then we would take that into consideration and probably most likely not do a termination of assistance because it wouldn't be a longevity of an income stream that would be consistent over the next few years beyond the 2 years that we're required to monitor that over income family.
Yes. So for the record, do we have what you just said in a policy that says here are some exceptions to what that is? Because my concern is that, yes, Chandler is a great place to live. We do have some challenges. We do have some job opens for call centers, and that's going to allow them to create extra additional revenue. And we want them to create that additional revenue. But do we want a policy in place that says after 2 years, you have to go because of the fact that you're making an unusual amount of income? I just kind of think that we need more clarity to say, yes, this is the thing. Because right now what you're telling me, it sounds good. But what we're doing is actually making policies to say this is how we're going to moving forward. And I want to make sure that if there is going to be exceptions to the rules, that the people of Chandler know what those exceptions are. So when they're coming into the contract, they understand, hey, if you're working for one of our call centers who could possibly pay you commission, you could possibly get bonuses, and it could extend over a period of time because that does happen in sales. We have these exceptions in place, or these are the guidelines behind it, so that way they're clear. Do you understand what I'm sharing with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
All right.
Thank you.
And so if we can make sure, I feel more comfortable, we making sure that these type of exceptions, if there is any type of exception, and there's any type of that's in writing, because what you're asking us to do is to regulate more of what HUD already, you said that HUD already does regulatory. And so as a city, we can come in and add more guidelines to what they're already regulating. So if we update these policies and we're adding more guidelines to that, if we're adding more guidelines to it, then it needs to be very, very clear, because I personally feel uncomfortable with this because of the fact that the feds already regulates it. And just so you know, I too was a product of this right here. And what we're doing as a city, I don't want to see that was done when I first started out and having a young family, trying to struggle, trying to make it, going to college, going to school, trying to watch my income, need more money because I don't have the money. And then I get somebody saying, well, you're making over the income. Well, I still have utility bills. Some of these people still may have a car note. Some of these people still may have regular things that we use every single day to live. And what you're saying is, well, you're making over the income. Well, their income still may not support what they're actually doing. And so I just I'm leery of the city coming in, making more stringent policies around something that's already federally regulated that we all kind of pay into. I just kind of think that we may be stretching it. So those are my brief comments about that. I just kind of wanted to put that out there. So if there is exceptions, then we need to have those exceptions clear in writing, what that looks like. And then that gives the council or the commission a better opportunity to critique or to say yes or no. But right now, you gave us a vague statement. And now when I'm asking you more details, you're sharing synopsis based on what what you're sharing, what you normally do. But I don't see that right now. But if it is there and I'm missing it, that's fine. I just kind of feel like we need to have more research behind this.
Chairman
So-
Harkey and Commission Member Harris, let me just give you a little context.
Okay.
We currently do not have anybody that's over income currently living in public housing.
Okay.
And more so, the over income is calculated on an annual basis, which is included in our ACOP plan. And for example, a family of two would be over income if they're making $74,760 living in public housing. And so what this policy just then states is if the family is consistently going over income after that second year, then the Housing Authority has an option to terminate assistance at that time. But again, we're monitoring, we're talking to the families, we're really digging in to understand what that family's specific circumstances are, because like I initially had said, we're in the business of housing families. We want to make sure that we house the families in the eligible status per HUD regulations, and that we're able to get through our wait list, because currently we have over 1,000 people vying for a public housing
I
unit.
understand that, but I just, my thing is this.
So
It's not, it's, let me finish this point. I'll turn it over to you. It's not about, what we're trying to do is help people that's in the situation right now. Looking at how many other people's behind that person is not how we should look at it. If you look at the income of 74,000, to many that's a lot of money. That's a whole lot of money. They should be able to establish. That's what most people would say.
do you have
But
a question
when-
still?
But just 1 second, I'm making my point. My point is this: I'm an accountant. 74,000 for a family may seem like a lot of money, but it's not really a lot of money because of the fact once you pay taxes, they don't qualify for earned income credit, they don't qualify for child tax credit, and all the low income subsidies that you get when you file your tax return. What they end up doing is paying 50% of that money out or more to taxes. So that's kind of what I'm just sharing, that changing this policy, what it does is it unlocks a whole different level of curiosity and conversation behind it. So that's why I really wanted to make sure that I'm on the record and I'm clear that putting together something like this would then make that's us actually going in and saying that we're gonna make more rules behind the rules that HUD has already set out. So that's what I'll share.
Commissioner Rowe, and then Commissioner Ellis.
Answer my question, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Ellis, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your comment, Commissioner Harris. When I asked for this presentation, what I wanted to hear was the fact that there was a plan, an exit plan for anyone who enter HUD. And how do we go about doing that as a city? And I know that HUD has their own plans, they have their own, as far as rules that we follow. This, what we are trying to do right now is within our own measures where we can put guidelines, we're trying to put guidelines so we can help more people, right? The whole point of this whole program is to empower people to get out of poverty. And the reason why I wanted to know exactly how do we do that? And you explained that in the beginning. First, you told me that there will be education. There will be ways of helping them, literacy in managing their incomes, how to do that, how to live on more larger on less, and those kinds of things in order for them to be able to exit the program, which is great. Thank you so much for that. Another thing that you said that's very important right now for the people of Chandler to understand is that this city thrive on communication, which is you're going to communicate with your tenants from the time they enter, prior to even signing the contract, that they know exactly what the rules are and how you're going to help them to exit the contract. Have we had many people exiting this program in the fashion that you explained earlier?
Yes, Chairman Hartkey, Commission Member Ellis. So, for instance, in public housing, since the inception of the Public Housing Family Self-Sufficiency Program, which was established in 2017, we've had approximately 26 graduates from that program. 6 of them are buying homes, and that's just in the last 7 years. And again, we have the family self-sufficiency in our Housing Choice Voucher program as well. And those numbers are even a lot higher than that. So yes, we are having some success. And again, with the FSS program, we do counseling with our families at least 4 times a year. It's actually a lot more than that. So we really have a vetted interest to make sure that our families are successful. And to be honest, Chandler is one of extremely high performing PHAs in which a lot of other jurisdictions look to us and our success with our FSS program.
The next question that I have, Commissioner Harris mentioned the fact that with consistency as far as money, when it comes to overtimes and bonuses and all those kinds of things, what I'm hearing you saying is that we have 3 years, right? A consistent 3 years to see this income being above 74,000 before we can make any move. That's already in the plan. That's already in the policy, right?
So Chairman Harkey, Commission Member Ellis, it's actually 2 years, and we monitor after that first year. So once they are over income, we're monitoring them throughout that 2-year period. Then after the 2-year period is when we consult with them and say, is this an actual correct number for your income? We do third-party verification. So we don't just self-certify of that income. We are checking by a third party, their employer or whatnot that is. So we're verifying as well.
Okay. It is my understanding this whole program, whether it was heard from day one when it was instituted, it was a program to help people to lift them up out of poverty, not to keep them in. And over the years, what we've seen is that this program became a place where people just stay in order for them not to move out of it. Whatever the problem is, some people that they probably cannot mentally handle, regular life or regular job, however it is. I think what we need to look into right now, as Councilmember Harris mentioned earlier, is a safety net. If it means that we are going to re-examine the verbiage, how we say it in the paperwork that we are going to agree on, and to put that fact that there will be an exception, that as you explained it earlier, if we could do that, then I am fine with moving forward and making the changes that we need to make. Thank you for your
Council, any further questions or,
Or-
I'm sorry.
Chairman.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. So the reasoning behind this, though, again, audit, have to do it every couple of years. We need to be in compliance with HUD, right? And so we needed to adjust and add this into our own policies because, again, there's a HUD, correct me if I'm wrong, though, there's a HUD requirement that says that if you have people in your housing that are over income at these certain levels, you need to get them out so that you can start serving other people that need. Is that correct, or you can correct me?
So Chairman Harkey, Commission Member Lopez, the regulatory requirement is HUD requires that PHA to monitor an over income family for the 2 years.
Mhm.
The discretionary piece is, one, you could do termination of assistance after the 2 years, in which this policy is based on, or that family can pay fair market rent and live in public housing until whatever time they feel that they need to move on. But my point is that even in that scenario, we're still working with families. We're talking to them, seeing how they can exit out of assisted housing. What's the next plan? How are you going to get there? So that would be an alternative. But currently, how the policy is written is a termination of assistance after the 2 years.
Okay. And just a quick Google search, I know you may not have this at your fingertips, but according to the HUD um, requirements, and falls under Section 8, which I believe would probably be the same assistance, that it does include every one of those, any type of support, salary, overtime, pensions, child support, alimony, welfare, disability, workers' compensation, lottery winnings. I mean, all of that is considered income. So income is income,
Correct.
and that needs to be taken into account. Yeah, again, one-time lottery winnings, I guess, I mean, that's not going to be reoccurring unless you're really lucky. But again, for this policy, we have to look at a case by case. We're not doing this heartless. We're not doing it black and white, but we're doing it in the sense of what was your income. We have some discretion to say, let's work with you on that third year if it's time to start having those hard discussions on, do you really want to still live in public housing, or we can help somebody else when you're making over $74,000 a year as a couple. Those are the discussions that we start having. And right now, again, in our policy, though, it states that we would talk about terminating, but we did not go down the path of offering, what was it, fair market value,
Fair market rent.
fair market rent. We did not go down that path on our policy.
Chairman Harkey and Commission Member Lopez, no, we did
Okay.
not.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Rowe.
Chairman, thank you. It's been a good discussion, and thank you for your comments. Thank you, Chairman Harris.
Commissioner Harris.
Commissioner, you're the chairman. You're the chairman. So I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the Public Housing Authority Commission regular meeting for this date, April 5th, and consent items number 1 and 2. That's my motion.
Okay, Council, we have
I'll-
also second
discussion
with
before the
Commissioner
motion is passed.
Ellis.
Yeah.
Before we vote, your question, sir?
Yeah, I wasn't, before the motion was passed, I think Matt has some, before the motion was granted, I still had a few more questions. And then I know, are we still in discussion?
Yeah.
'Cause I still had, okay, because I thought he was putting a motion out to close it.
So we have a motion and a second, which means that that's what's on the table. But
Okay.
yeah, until
I
someone
had a
would call
few-
the question, there's still discussion possible. Is that correct, City Attorney?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Chairman,
still
I have
had a
questions
few.
too.
I know
Go.
Matt had a couple questions. I still had a few more
Commissioner
questions.
Harris, proceed.
Okay. My next question was about the late payments. The late payments within the new policy update, there will be, if you're late 6 times, you want to reduce it down from being late 6 times. So let's be clear, the rent is due on the 4th. If you're late 6 times within a 24 to 48 month period or something like that, within a duration of time, then we can then proceed forward to evict. Instead of being 6, you're moving it down to 4. Is that correct? That's what it reads in there, right? Okay. So my question is this: how many people have actually violated the 6 for us to say move it down to 4?
Chairman Harkey, Commission Member Harris, I wouldn't have per se the actual numbers. The issue though becomes to the Commission Members Ellis' point about communication. So after the 5th day, if a resident has not paid their rent, then we issue a 14-day notice. In which case we contact the resident and ask them to please pay their rent. If they communicate with us and ask for a rent extension, we will definitely grant a rent extension up to the 15th day of the month. If the tenant does not pay on that 15th day, again, we will issue another 14-day notice of termination or of late payment. And then in regards to this particular policy, you can do that 4 times. Then the 5th time would be a non-negotiable, uncurable lease violation. And you know, from 6 to 4 months was a discretionary item. And we had felt that through the experience that we've had, if a family is not communicating with us, especially if it's a reduction in income or an increase of income, there's opportunities for them to talk to our office and see if there's even a change of rent payment that needs to happen. So we feel there's a number of opportunities to work with our office. Again, we want to make sure that our tenants are paying on time, but we will allow for rent extensions if that were to happen. We're just reducing the number of times that does happen.
So my question is that why should the commission update the policy to bring it from 6 to 4 if we have no data to prove that, moving it down to 4 will help other people that's in the line to get in the line? So I'm just trying to figure out, there's no data right now that you're sharing that supports changing this item. And I understand that it may be just a policy thing, but this stuff is important. These details are important to everyone because they may not read this stuff. But I had an opportunity to read the whole policy, and that's why I'm trying to really target conversations behind things that people may not think is important, but I know long term down the road could be important. So if we don't have no data to change the policy, why change a policy that we're not having issues with?
Yeah.
So go ahead and answer his question first.
Okay. Chairman Harkey, Commission Member Harris, with this particular policy, again, it is discretionary. And if the recommendation and guidance is to maintain it at the 6, we'd be happy to go and do a substantial amendment because this plan is due to HUD on April 17th. However, if it's the direction to continue with the previous policy of 6 times, we can do that. And again, it's a discretionary item. And we work with our families. We don't want them to get to that 5th time. And we've had probably a number of conversations with them prior to that, asking if there's income changes and things like that, so they don't get to that point again. Because in public housing, they could be living in public housing and have 0 income, in which case they wouldn't be paying any income. Paying any of their income to rent. And in some cases, especially during this time, if there's a reduction of income, it's the tenant's responsibility to let us know. We can adjust their rent based on whatever income situation they're in. And again, we want to keep them housed. We're not wanting to do any type of eviction of termination of assistance. But we feel at this point that at that 6th time, that it's more of a reason to, there's something not working in terms of the communication piece of that. And so we feel that by trying to catch it earlier, to have that more communication up front, will hopefully allow them to stay housed.
Yeah, Chairman, I just don't know if there's sufficient amount of information that she's provided to us in terms of 6 to 4. I just don't see we need to get more research before we say, let's make that policy change. They're doing a good job in terms of communicating, but I just don't see that 6 to 4 thing. I just cannot see how that.
And we will have a chance to vote on that. I think Councilmember Ellis and also, Councilmember Orlando had some comments.
I'm commissioner, council member, whatever. It doesn't matter. Thank you, appreciate it. So let's, staff, I have a question. So how many people are on the waiting list right now? And let me, this is for public housing only, not vouchers,
Okay.
correct?
Yes, Chairman Harkey, Commission Member Orlando, for public housing, we currently have a wait list of 1,096 families
Okay.
on public housing wait list.
And do they have to be in Chandler, the public housing folks that are on the wait list?
No, you can apply if the wait list is open for any of open wait list.
Okay, so we've done that in the past. There's a lottery system and we've done that in the past, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so how many people have you asked to leave? How many people, residents, have you been asked to leave, say, in the last 10 years?
Unless they violate a lease, then, unless they're not eligible
Right.
income-wise,
Right.
then no, we don't do evictions. Oh, we don't do evictions often.
So safely assured, our policies, our our actions, our historical perspective. We really don't want to be tossing folks out,
That's correct.
correct? I mean, we're trying to work with these folks to get them to the next stage of their lives, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So is 6 months a benchmark that we pulled out somewhere, or a recommendation, or other cities doing this? Where does 6 months come from?
I think from our perspective, it's been in our policy, so it's been a historical number of times that a tenant can be late on rent. We consult with industry professionals, and the recommendation to change it from 6 to 4 months was a recommendation through the industry professional consultation that we have, which is an annual subscription to make sure that we stay on top of all these policy changes, both regulatory per HUD and also discretionary that housing authorities have to maintain and monitor our programs.
So what's the benchmark? Other cities, are they doing the same thing? Are they reducing their timeframes, or are they increasing them? Or do we have a feel for what Tempe, Phoenix, or maybe not Phoenix, but Tempe and the surrounding cities are doing?
I would say in this particular policy, I would have to look, but for over income, it's a mixed bag. There's housing authorities that do evictions, termination of assistance, and then there's some that, have tenants pay fair market rents. So on your particular question, I would have to do a little survey to look to see, but at this point, I don't know
Okay.
that answer. At this point.
So one last question, Commissioner Chairman. This is looked at every year, correct?
Correct.
And you'll bring this back next year, correct?
That is correct.
And with that, you'll have additional metrics next year implementing this policy. Okay.
Yes, we will have. We can.
So, okay, fair enough. So all I would ask you and the staff here is that if you see this violation, in other words, we have to ask people to leave because of 4 months versus 6 months. If you see income is dramatically rising, you're going to bring that back to us, I would hope, as a briefing or a memo or something to keep us posted on what's going on in our world, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, and if we need to modify this, that's not a question, Mayor, it's a statement, right? If you need to modify this, we'll bring this back next year.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sounded like a question to me, but it's.
All right,
You raise
just
your
fair,
voice if
fair
you-
enough, Mayor. Allow me a little indulgence, okay? Thank you, sir. Thank you, thanks, Staff. Thank you, Chairman.
Councilmember Ellis, Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor. Now, back to the point that I made earlier concerning what are we doing when people enter the program? What is the point of being in the program, and how do we exit them out? Is it to train them so that when they go on their own, that they will be able to know that rent is due on time, and nobody is going to wait for you for 6 months before they kick you out of their own property? And second, is it also a way to help them to communicate? Because all I'm hearing here is that notice after notice after notice is being sent, right? And so what we're doing is we want to, at a point, to narrow it down, like you always said, Commissioner Orlando, is that we are trying to identify the bad apples, right? The bad actors, as you say, so that we can actually help those who really need the help so they can go forward. Is that the point of all the changes that we're trying to make?
Chairman Harkey, Commission Member Ellis, that is absolutely correct.
Well, someone ready to call the question? All right, I heard that. So that officially ends discussion, and council, poll of the commission.
Vice Chair Stewart.
Yes.
Commissioner Dearman.
Yes.
Commissioner Harris.
No.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
Commissioner Rowe.
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis.
Yes.
Commissioner Orlando.
Yes.
Chairman Harkey.
Yes.
Motion carries by majority with Commissioner Harris dissenting.
All right, thank you. Well, Commissioner, this is the longest we've seen you at one of our meetings, so it's always good to see you again. And with that, that concludes our Public Housing Authority. Welcome to the the Chandler City Council study session. And clerk, again, please take the roll.
Mayor Harkey,
Here.
Vice Mayor Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember Harris,
Here.
Councilmember Lopez,
Here.
Councilmember Rowe,
Here.
Councilmember Ellis,
Here.
Councilmember Orlando. We have a quorum.
Here.
Wow, that was unusual. Uh, Next on our agenda is scheduled public appearances. And if Councilmember Lopez, if you would please join me up front. Acting City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. For our service recognitions this evening, we do have two. I would like to start by inviting Derek Horn, our Development Services Director, forward to make his presentation.
Jim Dawson, would you please come forward? Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jim came to the City of Chandler's Building Safety Plan Review Team 15 years ago after a brief stint in Gilbert. Previously, before relocating to the Valley, Jim had a successful career in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, where he supervised commercial construction projects for his own and his father's contracting business. Jim's experience in the private sector prepared him well for his role here in reviewing construction plans and issuing building permits. Jim is a certified plans examiner with the International Code Council and is known as a thorough reviewer who has an unfaltering attitude and commitment to the job. He exemplifies the core values of Chandler, provides a cheerful presence in the office, and has earned the respect of his coworkers. It is a pleasure to work with Jim, and we are fortunate to have him serve our community with us on the Development Services team and Team Chandler. Thank you, Jim.
Mayor, members of the council, this time I'd like to ask John Knutson, our Public Works and Utilities Director, to come forward and make his presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd like to ask Robert Culbertson to come down and join the mayor to receive his 15-year service recognition. In April 2006, Robert Culbertson was hired as a meter reader for the Meter Services Division. He has progressed through his career, holding positions such as Utility Systems Operator 1, Utility Meter Technician, and currently, with his most recent promotion in August 2017, as Water Audit Technician with the Water Conservation Division. Rob has an excellent work ethic and has shown pride in his work for the past 15 years. He has always taken it upon himself to go above and beyond in not only identifying issues and discrepancies in the field, but actively participating in their resolution. Rob's knowledge, commitment, exceptional customer service, and dedication to performing the best job possible has ensured every customer he comes in contact with feels that the City of Chandler has the best service and employees in the Valley. Thank you, Rob, for 15 years of dedicated service to the citizens of Chandler and the Public Works and Utilities Department.
Mayor, that concludes our service recognitions tonight.
Thank you, Acting City Manager. Next, we have 3 proclamations. The first is Volunteer Recognition Week. I believe we have some volunteers here from Cornerstone and Zobio. If you would please join us. Welcome. So I'm going to read a proclamation and then have you all introduce yourselves, and then we will take a picture. Whereas the City of Chandler and For Our City would like to honor the substantial contributions of volunteers in the Chandler community, and whereas each year some of Chandler's top volunteers are celebrated through the annual Volunteer Recognition Awards, and whereas thousands of volunteers throughout the City of Chandler help make our city a better place through their generous giving of time, talents, in a number of endeavors, and whereas many Chandler businesses lend their time, talent, voice, and resources to meet the critical needs of our community, and whereas the National Volunteer Week is a time for organizations across the country to honor volunteers for their selfless contributions and recognize the irreplaceable impact of their time and energy year-round. Now therefore I, Kevin Hartke, Mayor of the City of Chandler, Arizona, do hereby proclaim April 18th through 24, 2021 as Volunteer Recognition Week. You would tell us who you are? Pass the mic.
Samson Zito from Zovio.
Caitlin Kump from Zovio.
Jody Peterson from Cornerstone.
Laura Gaylord from Cornerstone.
And Joe Gaylor from Cornerstone.
Joe Gaylord, it's always good to see you back in the city where you have invested a big portion of your life. So thank you for your service. Our next proclamation is for Fair Housing Month. And if we would, if our Neighborhood Resources Cares team would join us. Council member.
My first time doing it through the mask. You can hear me, yeah. So, whereas April 2021 marks the 53rd anniversary of the signing of the Fair Housing Act, and whereas equal opportunity for all, regardless of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disabilities, or familial status, is a fundamental right of our nation and state. And whereas the Neighborhood Resources Cares team was created to assist residents in keeping their housing with the help of our local nonprofit organizations, and whereas access to fair shelter is a basic human need, and when shelter is denied, the quality of human life is greatly diminished. And whereas the City of Chandler recognizes and values the efforts of those who seek to reduce barriers to full and fair housing opportunities, and whereas April is designated nationally as Fair Housing Month, now therefore Kevin Hartke, the Mayor of the City of Chandler, does hereby proclaim the month of April 2021 as Fair Housing Month.
Hello, I'm Lilia Gonzalez. I'm part of the Chandler Cares team, and it's great to be back working with Chandler families in crisis, connecting them with resources. And I also have...
My name is Dylan Raymond with the City of Chandler Cares team as well.
And Cici Cantabrano with the City of Chandler Cares team.
Let's take a picture. Lilia, good to have you back, by the way. Our last proclamation is National Library Week. Whereas the city of Chandler celebrates National Library April 14th through 10th of this month, and that libraries of all types are at the heart of their cities, towns, schools, and campuses, serving their communities. And whereas the Chandler Public Library is accessible and is an inclusive place that fosters a sense of belonging and community, its service extends far beyond the four walls of its buildings, and everyone is welcome to use their resources. And whereas the libraries offer opportunity to everyone to explore new worlds, become their best selves through access to technology, multimedia content, educational programs, and whereas to adapt to our changing world, the Chandler Public Library is expanding and updating its resources and continuing to meet the needs of its patrons, both in person and virtually. And whereas the Chandler Public Library, librarians, and library workers are joining library supporters and advocates across the nation and in our community to celebrate National Library Week. Now, therefore, I, Kevin Hartke, Mayor of the City of Chandler, Arizona, do proclaim the week of April 4 through 10, 2021 as National Library Week. And we have some representatives to come up and join us. Yeah.
Just very briefly, it's been a trying year for everyone, obviously, with COVID, but I'm really happy and proud to be part of the library as president of the board of directors of the Friends of the Library to report it's been a stellar year for us regardless. We ran a campaign just over the last couple of months called Love Your Library. We received dozens and dozens of heartfelt thanks for the service that the libraries have provided during this trying time for not only kids, but adults, computer service, everything that the library is known for, we were able to still provide to the community and the members of Chandler. I'm very proud to accept this proclamation on behalf of the Friends of the Library organization. Our job is to raise money to give back to the library and back to the community and back to the programs. And I have to report we're doing very well. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Council, we do have one more appearance tonight, and that is Joseph Yang with the Asian Association for Youth and Culture. I believe you should have had a flyer placed before you at the J's here, so that's what he'll be referring to. Joseph Yang, come on up. You have 3 minutes. State your name and address for the record, sir.
Joseph Yang, 4909 West Joshua Boulevard, Chandler, West Joshua Boulevard, Chandler, AZ 85225. Hello, Mayor and Council. It is my honor to be a scheduled public appearance this time as opposed to an unscheduled. I can actually hear all of your amazing voices and receive the incredible feedback I'm sure you'll all provide. My name is Joseph Yang, and I am the newly elected president of the Asian Association for Youth and Culture, the AAYC. I am here today to introduce this new organization to you, the Mayor and Council. The mission of the AAYC is to support youth through community and culture. Our goals are to bring more Asian community and diversity to Chandler and its neighboring cities, as well as raise awareness of specific needs for the Asian American youth in our community. Chandler has the highest population of Asian Americans in Arizona. Based on the U.S. Census of 2010, the number of Asians in Chandler is 19,401 out of a total population in Chandler of 261,165 residents. Yes, that's correct. Total population in Chandler. That is 7.4%. Yet Chandler has the least amount of Asian groups. Most of the Asian groups are located in Phoenix, Tempe, and Scottsdale. Some of the more reputable organizations being the Asian Chamber of Commerce, the OCA, Organization of Chinese Americans, the 4A, Arizona Asian American Association, and the AZLA, Arizona Lao Association. That is the problem and the issue that we at the AAYC are trying to fix and rectify by bringing more Asian culture and diversity to Chandler. I want to also introduce our board members, some of whom you may already know. Stephen Deep is our treasurer, and he is with me here today. He's also a property manager at Mekong Plaza. We have Stephanie Piche as our secretary. Stephanie is also a special education teacher for the Chandler Unified School District. We have Gary Ong. He is the president of the Chinese Restaurant Association, as well as a small business owner. James Park is a local realtor and a former subcommittee member for the City of Chandler Asian Village Planning Committee for the 21st Annual Multicultural Festival. He is also here with me. And Dr. Lo Ann Dao is a business owner of Smile Care Dentistry in Chandler, Arizona. She is also a former subcommittee member for the City of Chandler Asian Village Planning Committee for the 21st Annual Multicultural Festival. We are still recruiting more board members and more staff and are very excited to serve the City of Chandler and work with this community to bring more Asian events and culture that make Chandler more appealing to future Asian groups, organizations, and associations. Thank you all for having me here and speaking to you and letting me introduce our organization. And I hope you all have a blessed night.
Thank you, Joseph. Appreciate you being here, and we look forward with more things opening up to once again celebrate like we did in 2019, the Asian Festival. And I'm hoping for more as with not only great food, but great fellowship and community. So we look forward to that.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Council, next on our agenda is the consent agenda. I did have two items that were called in, both by Councilmember Orlando. First is number 7, Councilmember Orlando.
Yeah, let's see, the new number 7, I believe, is the Serena Estate. Is that correct? Correct? All right, everybody's saying yes. Now, first of all, Mayor, all I want to do is I want to thank the staff, the developers, representatives, the citizens, and obviously our city. They, I personally witnessed several phone calls and back and forth, and this was a model that where everyone could work together, come up with a solution, and everyone could walk away happy. And I thank again the developer and the residents as well as staff. They've added 3 development items here in item 10, 11, and 12. And the residents are satisfied, so this went on from action to consent. So again, this is just another thing, working together and be able to get a solution versus being confrontational and maybe not have a solution. So thanks, kudos to everyone to make this happen.
All right, thank you. Next item called in was item number 10, the foreign trade zone with Viavi. Yeah.
And Mayor, again, just who's got this? Is it you, Economic Development? Yeah, I figured as much.
Economic Development Director, Micah Miranda.
Here, ladies and gentlemen, Micah Miranda.
Usually get booze these days.
No, I just want to thank you and the staff for bringing this forward. Now, we normally don't do many foreign trade zones. I've done a couple in the council. It basically is a reduction in taxes because they deal in globally, and that's good news for us because obviously we're a global presence here in Chandler. But traditionally, and I share this with the city manager, and I know the mayor obviously knows as well as some of the council members here, traditionally, the school district doesn't share, obviously, in some of those rewards. So we've asked our corporate citizens in the past to get with the school district, chat with them to see how they could help them be successful, because obviously if the school district's successful, they're going to provide the future employees to this company. So I just want to make that public. I want to, get with you and whoever else needs to deal with these individuals and remind them of that history we have with these new companies moving to Chandler. Thank them for picking Chandler, obviously, but if they could reach out to the school district and see what they could do to help out, we certainly would appreciate that. And that would help the school district a little bit, make up a little bit of the delta that they're potentially losing for this company.
Through the mayor, council member Orlando. What you spoke about, the relationship, what we like to refer to as the education employment feedback loop, was one of the things we discussed with the company prior to them selecting Chandler. And so they've shared with us they definitely want to engage with the school district, the community, and have expressed interest in already partnering on the SciTech Festival and those other partnerships we have in place.
Good. I appreciate that. Like I said, every little bit helps keep us strong and competitive, and that's school districts, a very competitive edge we have. So we want to help keep that going. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff.
To this or other items on the agenda tonight? Those are the only two called in. All right, seeing none other, that concludes our study
Oh,
session.
I got a question. Sorry.
Okay, Councilmember Harris.
It was on line 13.
Okay, and Councilmember Harris, it's helpful for staff if they know, if they have the right information for us, so please make sure if we missed it or if the clerk missed it, that's on city, but make sure we call these in so that they can get staff here to answer these.
Oh,
Go ahead, question 13.
got it. Well, I guess if their staff is not here to really answer the question, I had a few questions, but if staff is not available to answer these questions before we vote on it
No, go ahead, they might be, I'm just not sure the right question member
okay,
is
got
here,
it,
but
got it. I wanted to, this was about the photo enforcement, and I had some questions about it. My first question was that,
so would this be the chief?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I could ask our chief of police, Sean Duggan. He does have some prepared feedback on this one. If you'd
Okay,
like.
Chief Duggan. And if you called this in or had a previous, I'm sorry, I didn't, but go ahead.
No, I didn't. I didn't. So I don't know.
Proceed.
All right. How you doing, Chief?
I thought I was going home. Other than that, I'm doing good.
So close. I had the gavel raised.
So my question was in regards to this, and you might have, and if we have to, if you need to table it and get more data, that's perfectly fine with me. I had a couple of questions. The first question was, since the photo cameras that's in Chandler right now, how many photo cameras are there in Chandler right now?
So there are 17 cameras in the city, and they are positioned at 12 different intersections. So if you want, I do have a small presentation.
Okay.
That I can go through if.
Please. We got you up here.
Okay. Need someone to cue it up. Thank you. So at any point, feel free to ask questions or just press through it, and then any questions you may have afterwards, I'll do my best to answer. But just starting as far as the program itself, from the beginning, the overall goal of the program was to shape behavior, to influence drivers, to help reduce collisions in our city, because we know that the photo enforcement program does have that type of influence. And if it prevents collisions from happening, obviously that's our goal. But if collisions do happen, can they be mitigated and less severe? And that is one of the goals from the beginning from our photo enforcement program. We started this program back in 2001 with, I believe there were 4 intersections at the time. And we contracted with the vendor called Redflex. And in 2007, we renewed that contract. And then we actually expanded the program up to 12 intersections in 2007. And then we went into another contract with Redflex, and that contract ended in 2016. And then after a competitive bidding process, we selected another vendor called American Traffic Solutions, also known as Vera Mobility. And we went into a 5-year contract with ATS, and that expires this year. And then there's an option for another 5-year contract extension, which I'll touch on in a second. So we know that nationally that one of the leading causes of urban crashes is red light running. And not only do they cause crashes and collisions, but they often cause death and severe injuries. And over the years, we know that studies have shown that there has been a significant reduction in collisions at our intersections that have photo enforcement cameras. And we know as a partner in the program that has certainly been beneficial from the police vantage point. And using photo enforcement is leveraging a technology that exists today that can help keep our roadways safe and does help keep our roadways safe. And it also supplements our officers on the street. The photo enforcement program does not replace any Chandler police officers. It augments our complement by providing essentially 24-hour coverage around these high-prone collision intersections. And it's also just part of the overall city's traffic plan, which is using the 3 E's, which is enforcement, education, and engineering. So I said presently there are 12 intersections, and some of those intersections have 2 cameras, so 2 different approaches. So one may be a northbound approach and one may be a westbound approach, but for a total of 17 cameras, and that number has not increased since fiscal year 2007, 2008. And since 2007, 2008, all of those cameras not only are red light detectors, but they also detect speed and issue speeding citations for speeding violators. And each approach is clearly marked by signage 300 feet from the approach from the intersection. And not only do we have signage, which is required by statute, but we also have radar speed feedback displays. So as you're entering that approach from 300 feet, there's a sign, and then there's an additional feedback display to show exactly how fast you're going as you enter that intersection. So there is no attempt to hide these. We are doing everything we can to give people warning and advance notice that there is a operational camera ahead. So these are the 12 locations. I'll plot them on a map in a second. And again, it also highlights which of these locations have dual cameras. And here they are just plotted on the city map. So presently, not only does Chandler have a photo enforcement program, but so does Scottsdale, Mesa, City of Phoenix, and Paradise Valley. Those are the cities that have photo enforcement programs in the valley. It's just a little information on our financials. So the revenues vary from year to year, and some years this just went back 5 years at simplicity, but we have the numbers from the beginning. But some years the city makes revenue, a profit off the program, and other years the city does not, and it kind of evens out over time. But if you look at this chart, the green column, I'm sorry, the blue column represents the revenue, and there's really 3 sources of revenue on behalf of the city. One is fines. So the city gets a percentage of the fines that are collected. If a average red light ticket costs $260, the city gets about 40% of that share. So that's an income for the city. We also get funding from what a person, if they choose to attend defensive driving school. Each time they attend that school, the city gets another $65 from the violator when they're paying their school tuition. And then the other source of income is if a person ignores the citation in the mail and we are compelled to send a process server to serve the citation, we get reimbursed, we charge back to that person. I believe that's another $60 that we receive. So those are the 3 sources of revenue for the city. And the column on the right, the black column, that is are expenses. So for every legible, actionable citation that is provided to us, every actionable photo that is provided to us from the vendor, we pay them $20 for every photo, actionable photo. These are photos that now we would move forward in the process and send out a notice of violation. So that is an expense. But there's also an expense for running the program. Both the court and police department each have an individual that's paid full-time and funded through this program to administer the program. And then there are times throughout the year where we spend some of that excess revenue, or when we're in the black, we will take some of that money and reinvest it in the program for safety enhancements, whether it's new signage or poles or variable messaging signs or speed trailers. So these are some of the things we purchased over the years. In fact, going back to about 2006, we spent close to half a million dollars, about $500,000 worth of enhancements that we've used from this fund, which is restricted just for traffic safety between PD and traffic engineering. So it's in a restricted fund, and if there is excess revenue, we use that revenue to put back into the system to help, again, keep the roadways safe. So tonight, or actually be Thursday night, but what's on the council agenda is the request would be for council then to approve the one additional 5-year contract extension with ATS to continue to provide the photo enforcement program here in Chandler.
And did you have a question to follow up? Then I'll work my way across.
Chief, is it possible you can go back to the map where the red cameras, where the photo cams are? Okay. Can you identify the area that you see most of the cameras in? Like, is that like that's North Chandler and West Chandler, right?
Appears to be around my house, and I'm suspicious.
The cameras are located in what historically are the high collision intersections.
Okay. And I'm wondering, can they pull the map back up on the presentation? I can go back to it on the PC presentation. Okay, there we go. Thank you, guys. I'm getting new. It's all new to me. Okay, these areas right here, would you identify those communities to be, what do you project the income levels are for these individuals, these residents that live in these areas where you like North and West Chandler? What do you think the income levels are for those individuals?
I have no idea.
No idea. Okay. Chief, do you notice that I'm just looking at the map and just saying that our cameras, you can see that most of the cameras are on North and West Chandler, the focus area, and then I do see a few in the south, and there's 3 in the south area because I live by one of them. So either they're targeting council because mayor said he has, but nevertheless, I'm just noticing this disparity. And then have you redone the numbers since these been placed there to see if these are still the same high traffic areas? Have you seen a decline in these things going down?
It's been a few years since we ran the numbers. We're actually in the process of doing that right now, but I am quite certain these are still the high collision locations. And if you look at those roads, those are main arteries, and there's a very high volume of traffic on those locations. So that's how they were identified.
Okay. And then my last question, Vice Mayor, you have some questions. I think I can yield so you can ask some more. Okay. All right.
Actually, going over here next. But finish up.
Okay. Got it. So my next question is that what was the revenue amount that we bring in for the city in terms of this amount? What do we bring in for revenue?
So it's going to vary from year to year. I can give last year's example, or this year. We're not quite through the fiscal year, but we are anticipating a net loss on the program of about $200,000.
And so if we're net loss 200,000, does the city then impute that loss or impute that money so that we can then renew the contract again?
And that's why it's a 5-year contract. So over the 5 years, it certainly historically has evened out.
Okay, so over time, it evens out.
Right. The
Okay.
prior 2 years before, it was a net increase.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions I have.
Councilman Orlando, then we'll work our way back.
Thanks, Mayor. So Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, because I remember when we first did this years ago. They need a police officer to verify the incident, correct?
That is correct. We have a sworn officer. Once the flash goes off, essentially the process
I guess my question
generally
is,
goes like this. So yes, every citation before it is sent out is reviewed and verified by a Chandler police officer.
so if that officer doesn't review it, it doesn't happen, right?
That is correct.
So why are they charging us $20 to review it?
Well, because
They
they're
should be
at
giving
the
it to us for free.
I'm sorry?
They should be giving us the photo for free. Otherwise, they can't do anything and we can't do anything. That was my question I had 15, 20 years ago.
I recall I read the minutes on that.
So I'm still, obviously we haven't fixed it, Chief.
Yeah.
Look, we need to, look, the other thing is I don't want to dwell on the expense. I never did and I never will. What I want to dwell on is the safety. If this proves us to be safe, then it's one tool in our toolbox to use. But by the same token, so I need to see those facts and figures. I like to see those. What does this mean by putting that traffic light here, and what does it save in lives and cost and insurance, all those things? I know you have the data, but I'm still going to hone in on this $20. I believe they shouldn't be doing that because again, they can't do anything, and they should be giving us that photo as a cost of them doing business and still paying for the officer's time and energy to do that. Otherwise, we don't have a program, guys. So I have a little concern with that. So maybe we need to talk a little bit more about that. And I do want to see the safety statistics on this issue. I voted for this every time. As you know, it's a pretty clear record. But I'm a little bit more concerned that we really haven't fixed that one element.
And some of the action that was taken after you spoke to this in 2008, I believe, was that we were paying I believe it was $15 or $16 at the time for every click, essentially. And some of those are not legible, and some of them they're not usable. So we are only billed for the actionable citations. So that's one of the things that came about after you brought that up a number of years ago.
Now let's take the next step and figure that out, okay?
I will convey that message to the vendor.
Okay. Any else on this side? Okay. I've got two questions. Chief, in your opinion, does this make our city safer?
Yeah, I believe without a doubt it makes our city safer.
And second question, and I don't know what the answer is this, but would we be using the same amount of sworns, more or less without this program? Does this help us in terms of officer management and numbers management, or is there no impact in terms of the amount of if this goes away, will it have any impact on our need for officers?
Again, it's if it goes away, there'll be no more traffic enforcement by our officers at any of these intersections than there are presently. So if this program goes away, no one is monitoring those locations 24/7.
Okay, so if we did get some calls from neighbors saying this intersection is crazy, we need to have some officers there to comply with that, we would have to, if it would change potentially the model, if we were finding ourselves having to issue citations, if that was an option, correct?
Again, it would change two things. I'm not sure about the model is the same model we have now. We have a limited amount of officers, and when we can get to it, we can get to it, especially if it's a proactive type event where someone calls and complains and we send officers there. We have fewer traffic officers now than we did back when this initiated, actually probably back in 2008. And the main benefit of this program is the influence and shaping of behavior. And that's hard to measure. But I'm confident based on my experience that it has influence on drivers' behavior when they're approaching at least that intersection. May not be sustainable, but when they know they're approaching that intersection, behavior changes. I'm very
Okay.
confident of that.
Thank you. Over on this side. Any questions? Vice Mayor.
There's the light. Thanks, Chief, for the presentation. I've got a number of questions, and we'll probably review those on Thursday. I didn't think we were going to be talking about it tonight on the study session. One thing I have asked Josh for a number of data points as it relates to this process. So we're talking about safety in intersections. I want to look back and say, okay, what did we improve? I'm also interested to know if this is a dereliction of the intersection itself. For example, we just redid Alma School and Chandler Drive in the north part of our city. If that's more of a function of why these accidents are happening versus whether or not there's red light cameras or not, there's a multitude of data points where the position of the timing between the red to green, if that's delayed, that also improves the safety of intersections. So we pay the $500,000 a year regardless of how many pictures are taken. And we also pay 20, and we pay 60, and we pay 265, and the list goes on as it relates to fining somebody for making a mistake. I want our streets to be safe. If this frees up a police officer from not having to track these anymore and puts them on traffic, then I'm all for that as well. It creates that personal touch. But I'll talk more about this on Thursday. But I would like to know what the number is on how many flashes. That's something new. But I've given you all this information already, I think, Josh, and we'll just circle up on Thursday. Thanks, Chief.
Just one last question. Chief, how many hours does it take for any of the police officers? How many hours? That's duty. How many hours are we tying up, looking at each photo, verifying, going through this process? How many hours are we spending in this area?
It's something that the officer does every single day. So every single day they receive information from ATS, and our desire, and we've been very successful, is that we're able to turn that around daily. So we don't have a large queue of tickets waiting like other cities do. So the fact that we're able to address it, it makes the process and the turnaround quicker. But essentially, it's a full-time job.
And lastly, how many tickets, how many of these things are you processing per day?
I don't have the number, but I know last year there's a difference between processing a citation, because some of these, why you want an officer looking at it, there could be issues with the photo. It could be variable things where you want the eyes of a police officer looking at it. So not all of those initial photos become citations. That's part of the vetting process. So I don't have the exact number that they go through, but last year we issued collectively in the city about 23,000 citations and overall, and just a little over half of those were generated through photo enforcement through the program.
And you don't know how many of those was actually turned over into a citation, or?
No, those are citations.
Oh, those are citations. Got it. Okay, so there was 23,000 citations issued
citywide, some by officers and some by technology.
Got it. And so
just over half of those were issued as a result of the photo program.
And you're going to get us the number on how many bad photos there could have been issued out?
I can get that. I don't have that now, but
that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all the questions I have, Mayor. That's all the questions I have.
Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Chief. I know we're going to talk about this on Thursday. I am curious about how many of the violations are red light violations, where someone disregarded the intersection or accidentally ran through the intersection, or inadvertently or on purpose or whatever, but versus how many were speeding. So I'd like to know the total, or how much it was per month or per year, if I could get that history on Thursday. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, while we're asking you questions, I've got one more too. I do know this year with the ability to enforce distracted drivers with cell phone use, et cetera, Is it too early, or do we have any information on that compared to historical to see our numbers going down because of the ban on texting while driving? And
Or what number is going down?
in terms of people burning through intersections, because that other tool is now available to us.
Right.
Or at least I know we can enforce it, but that's also more of an education piece. But I am curious if that is having any impact.
Yeah, it's difficult to measure that because if the photo's taken and the person's on the phone, that's one thing, but I don't believe we actually track that.
Yeah. To me, it would be our numbers, will we see a decrease in numbers because people are paying more attention to driving rather than?
I would think we need some more time.
Yeah.
The enforcement didn't begin until January of this year, so we're really just a quarter into it.
Yeah.
So I think we need at least a year or a couple of years of data.
That's kind of my thought, but I thought I'd ask anyway. All right. Last question reserved by Vice Mayor.
One other question, that maybe we can get some detail on Thursday. What does the camera record? Does it record all the time? Is it scanning every car that comes through? And let me find out if the data is being kept at ATS. Can we access all of that data? Where is that data going?
We do have access to all the data. I don't know. I don't recall at the moment how long that is stored.
Okay.
I don't know if it's 30 days or 14 days or 7 days, but I can find out.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Seeing that, thank you, Council. We'll see you on Thursday.